the AFC Championship game between the Chiefs and the Bills, and the Chiefs once again winning a nail-biter, 32-29. The Chiefs going on to their 5th Super Bowl in the last 6 years, and their 3rd straight Super Bowl. And like you said before, going for the first ever three-peat in Super Bowl history. So for you, what was the stat that really told the story in this game?
Honestly, it's the Bills and just not being good enough on defense. And we've seen in way too many big spots in prior years in the postseason, and now again this year, a 40.3 coverage grade in this game initially, and I don't expect that to change much in the review process. You could just feel it. They had no answers. It felt like, even to me, they were trying more man coverage schemes and different things that are kind of out of Sean McDermott's element just to try to find something that would work, and nothing did. And look, 40.3 coverage grade in this game. For the season, it's a 40.6. And that's the second worst in football. I mean, you know what? And I know I kind of hate the way it ended for Josh Allen, and he did have a shot with the ball in his hands, and he even made the throw, an improvised throw to Dalton Kincaid that he couldn't come up with. But at the end of the day, this Bills team, again, and it happens every postseason, they just don't make big stops on defense. And this year it was their secondary, and 40.3 coverage grade, 1 forced incompletion all night. And it was by Christian Benford, who left the game in the first quarter with a concussion, and I believe he had a concussion for the second game in a row. So I just look at this and I go, look, I understand the talk's going to be all about Allen, and he's not, people are going to, he's not great, and he can't do this, and he can't do that. But how much more do you want him to do when the Chiefs pretty much just walked to 32 points? And the Bills, you take out the fumble that was just clearly an unforced error. The Bills really only made 1 stop all night. I believe it was late in the third quarter. I mean, you can't win if you don't make any stops. At the very least, look, was the Chiefs' defense perfect tonight? No, but you do feel like with their players and with Steve Spagnuolo, they have a chance to make stops. They can make that 1 stop when it matters like they did at the end. The Bills don't have that. And they just honestly, in these postseason spots, they've never had it. You look at all these games and all the grades come out similarly in all these playoff games that they lose because they just don't step up and make stops when they need to.
And you mentioned the grades. Bad hosting on me. We got to go over the PFF grades here on the PFF Grade Release Show. Start off with the Kansas City Chiefs with their 5 highest grade players in this AFC Championship game victory. Starting off with Chris Jones. Talk about him just a little bit, but 90.6 grade for one of the best D tackles in the league, maybe the best D tackle in football right now. Xavier Worthy, 88.9. Really good game for the rookie. Leo Chenal with a 76.8 grade, Juju Smith-Schuster 75.8, Justin Reed 75, and Patrick Mahomes with a 71.3 mark. Let's go over to the Buffalo Bills with their highest graded players in the loss. James Cook with a 79 grade, Amari Cooper 76.6, offensive tackle Spencer Brown 74.8, Terrell Bernard 71.5, Matt Collins with a 70, and Josh Allen with a 60.9 grade. And yeah, Dalton, you mentioned it. It really goes into my most disappointing, honestly, with the Buffalo Bills secondary. I mean, they just really struggled out there. And honestly, did a pretty good job of holding Travis Kelce in check. But you see guys like there, Juju Smith-Schuster, Xavier Worthy, they were the ones beating the Bills in this game as well. Obviously, Kyer Elam had to play a lot in this game when they didn't really want him to out there. And you just look at that Bills secondary overall, man, and so many guys just struggled. DeMar Hamlin with a 29.4 coverage grade, Rasul Douglas 38.9 coverage grade, Kyer Elam with a 44 coverage grade as well. It's been one of the biggest problems with this Bills team all season. They have the second worst coverage grade in the NFL, only ahead of the Las Vegas Raiders. And it came back to bite them in this game as well, honestly. So it's definitely an area of focus for the Bills this offseason to improve that secondary and get more depth, honestly, in that secondary as well. And it really was the biggest issue in this game.
It's no coincidence that the two teams in the Super Bowl are the teams with the 2 highest graded defenses in football, Eagles 1 and Chiefs 2, and the 2 teams that lost, we'll get into the other one, but the Bills and the Commanders, both in the bottom 5. They just couldn't make stops. The Commanders didn't make stops all day, and the Bills, it's just a theme with them in the playoffs. They can't make stops when it really matters. So yeah. I think, look, these 2 teams that we're looking at, even if you don't think, and they're not, the Chiefs aren't as explosive as they've been in past years, but you could argue these are the 2 most balanced teams in football, right? Yeah. That's what you get is, you have all these other teams that we saw lost in the playoffs. The Lions, they ran out of guys on defense, right? The Texans couldn't pass protect, so their offense was struggling. Any of these other teams that we talk about that fell out, these 2 teams are the ones with balance. They have enough offense and obviously darn well enough defense to win ball games and big games. And again, from the Chiefs' angle on their side on defense, you don't have to hold Josh Allen to 10 points. That's not going to be a thing in spots like this. but you make the stops when it matters, right? The fourth down stop with the questionable video review on the sneak, and, my answer to that is kind of, okay, why are we running the sneak this many times when it's not really working? But they make stops when it matters. That fourth down stop, the one at the end on fourth down with, again, just like in the Super Bowl last year, Steve Spagnuolo blitzing Trent McDuffie on the biggest play of the game, and it works because, of course, I think that's the only time all game that he blitzed McDuffie, right? And that's just the exact kind of wild card that Spagnuolo is, that he can bring in big spots with 4 Super Bowl wins to himself already, on his belt. So I just think that's where the Bills have to make up ground. I don't have any question. We're going to hear it. We're going to hear all about it tomorrow. Oh, Josh Allen, he's not good enough, this and that and the other thing. Was he his best? No, it was gunslinger-ish at times, and there were a couple balls early that were ugly on the first drive.
You compared to Brett Favre in that first quarter
it was a Brett Favre up and down kind of performance, but at the end of the day, they ask him to be so perfect.
Yep.
Because they just don't make stops. You think even back to regular season games, the Lions win this game in the 40s, and they're losing to the Rams 44-42. At some point, you have to make it. Even if the Bills had an average defense, they'd probably win this game, honestly. And they just cannot put it together defensively in these big moments. And until they're able to do that, that's the part I worry about when it comes to them trying to win a Super Bowl.
They're asking him to be Superman out there. And when he can't be Superman, they lose these games, right? And he still made some unbelievable throws in this game to even have them in this position in the first place. Like 29 points on a Steve Spagnuolo defense is a really good performance, right? And just not enough, right? And I think that's the big problem with them is that he probably felt like, and that's why you saw in the first quarter with so many of those passes where it was like, okay, what are you doing out there, Josh? He's like, he probably thinks to himself, hey, I need to be Superman. I need to be the reason why we win this game, or else we're not going to win this game, honestly. My side tells story. Listen, we have a bunch of amazing advanced analytics over at PFF, but Dawn, it seems like it's voodoo magic right now. So my side tells story is not really a PFF Plus stat. It's the Chiefs have won 17 straight one-possession games. That sounds like a lot. It's because it is. That's the most in NFL history. 7 straight one-possession games they've won in the playoffs as well. It's hard to quantify the clutch factor, but they've got it, man. And it's just mind-boggling. We were kind of going over it when the Bills look like they have a chance to win this game. We're like, okay, how are the Chiefs going to pull it out? Because they're going to pull it out, right? And they ended up absolutely doing that. So just the fact that they've won 17 straight one-possession games. We mentioned it before. They're the 1 seed right now, right? They only lost 2 games all year. The last one was against the Broncos with a bunch of backups in there. So really, you could say the Stars only lost 1 game all year. Usually, when you think about that, you think, oh, wow, this is one of the best. This is maybe the best Chiefs team we've ever seen. This is one of the more flawed Chiefs teams we've seen in recent memory. And yet, here they are once again in the Super Bowl for the 5th time in the last 6 years, in their 3rd straight year, even with one of their more flawed teams, just because they somehow know when the going gets tough in the biggest moments, they figure out a way. And that, I think, is a stat to tell the story. That the Chiefs have won 17 straight games when it's 1 possession, and 7 of them in the playoffs as well. So, again, not an advanced analytic like all the great stats that we have, and we'll go over more in this game, but I just think that stat right there, that tells the whole story of the Kansas City Chiefs right now.
I think there's 2 things to all of that you just said. One, that's mathematically really not supposed to happen.
No.
It's the entire idea of, when you think about teams winning all those 1-score games. I take a team like the Minnesota Vikings earlier this year. Eventually, regression back to the mean happens, and it did for the Vikings with their last 2 games. Not that those were 1-score games, but it can kind of overinflate your results a little bit, right? But with the Chiefs, that's just how they live. It really is. It's just Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid doing what Tom Brady and Bill Belichick did for so many years when we thought, oh, these teams are flawed and there's hardly any stars and they're conservative and this and that. And it's just, at the end of the day, they have more points than the other side. And the scary part is when they talk about this being the Chiefs' most flawed team, they're talking about the offensive side, right? Yeah. Because it's flashier and they don't have Tyreek Hill anymore and they get more and more conservative every year. And this was, they're not all that explosive. 32 points tonight's their season high.
Yeah.
I know it's against the Bills, and the Bills and Eagles are in complete opposite ends of the defensive spectrum here, but they just scored a season-high number of points in an AFC title game. With a tie game on the line at the end, and Mahomes just casually drives them down for a field goal anyway, they're as dangerous as ever. And I think if you think, they don't take deep shots and they don't have all the fancy explosive plays, and it's not, sometimes I'll even admit to you, they go out of their way to make games boring. It's a defensive team. They grind out first downs. They do what they need to do. Even at the end with Andy Reid making that last play call on 3rd and 9, you go, okay, it's just an underneath throw that works against that specific coverage, and it's a done deal. They just find ways to get it done.
It just feels so eerily similar to the New England Patriots dynasty.
It's the same thing.
Right? With their defensive team, with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, but it's not flashy, right? It's just dink and dunk, and we're just going to find a way to win the game. It's the same exact thing, it feels like, honestly. That's what the Chiefs are doing. And listen, that stat of the one-possession games, every one-possession game, in theory, is like a coin flip. The Chiefs have won
close to it.
The Chiefs have won 17 straight coin flips. The Chiefs have won an entire NFL regular season worth of coin flips, essentially. That's just... It's mind-boggling. Dawn, for you, the most impressive part from this victory, though.
I'll go with the rookie. I'll go with Xavier Worthy, and I think he's someone who, down the stretch this season, Andy Reid really figured out how to use within this offense, right? Because everyone saw the 4-2-40, and obviously there's the side story of trading up with the Bills to go get him, and, well, they're regretting that now, aren't they?
Yep.
But earlier in the year, a big thing for me was they were trying to use him as that deep threat, use that speed, get down the field, and make it explosive in that sense. And they reeled that back in a lot down the stretch, and they've given him opportunities to make plays after the catch. I think we saw that several times. Obviously, we saw the controversial contested catch because it wouldn't be a title game without any sort of controversy, but goes up and makes that play. And honestly, just for Xavier Worthy at 5'9" and $170 to have a chance to go up and make that play, if we're saying he made it, and it by all accounts he did, despite whatever review and controversy that there always is around these games. He had a great game. Look, 7 catches, 93 yards, a touchdown, 87.8 receiving grade. It's a big part of what's become just a more multifaceted offense, even if it is conservative, more so than when they used to have Tyreek Hill. Because anybody expecting Xavier Worthy to be Tyreek Hill, that's a little unfair. But he can use his speed in different ways. And he's a solid short route runner. They get him in the screen game going. They get him in jet sweeps going a little bit. I think it's just another weapon that Andy Reid has had to figure out how to use because he's such a young kid. And obviously, he's a rookie. It took him a while. But I think for him to show up on the biggest stage like this in this game, and he said he was going to, he's like, look, that's the team that passed on me. They're gonna pay for it. And, of course, he goes out there and has, I would argue, his best game of the season. So big props to the rookie on the outside for getting it done.
That's a great point with the storyline, too, that the Bills traded with the Chiefs, and they end up getting Xavier Worthy with that draft selection. And you're a great point because, listen, if you told me Travis Kelce finished this game with 2 catches for 19 yards, I was like, man, Josh Allen and the Bills finally did it, huh? And nope. Xavier Worthy stepped up. Juju Smith-Schuster stepped up as well. Great performances by them to end up winning this game. Listen, Xavier Worthy had his flaws coming out of Texas, right? But the one thing was he's fast, and he's quick, and he's a good route runner. And that was on full display in this game as well. My most impressive is a guy that has been most impressive basically his entire career, and that is Chris Jones, man. He was basically unblockable in this game. He had 5 pressures in this one, a 15% pressure rate as well. He had a quarterback hit in this game. Really good in run defense as well for Kansas City. I mean, Chris Jones is the best defensive tackle in football right now. He is unbelievable. 81.7 run defense grade. He had a tackle for loss and run defense as well. Chris Jones was, and not even like there's some plays where he didn't show up on the stat sheet with a tackle or anything like that, but just blowing up the guards and center for Buffalo, man. Chris Jones, best D tackle in football, one of the best defensive players in football, and he was, by all accounts, basically the best player on the field in tonight's game.
And I think it doesn't get talked about enough. We talk all the time about, how great Andy Reid is, and Patrick Mahomes in the spotlight, and Travis Kelce, playoff Kelce, him and Jerry Rice sharing all the records, but Chris Jones is one of the best postseason performers at any position all time. I mean, it's just every time you need this big of a game from him, from a Bills offensive line that played really well all year. That interior, look, it's obviously a task anytime you're trying to block number 95, but the fact that he was this dominant, and look, the Bills had their moments. They ran the ball well in the second half, but it felt like every single time there was a big play. Of course, Chris Jones was just pushing the pocket through the middle and making Allen escape it, right? It's just... He's just one of those guys, just like Mahomes and Kelce on that level. First ballot Hall of Famer, should be. And just I think we have to remember with him, he's like the third constant in all of this with all these Super Bowl victories is he's at his position, he's every bit of what Mahomes and Kelce are to theirs. And Jones is just incredible, and he steps up in every big moment. He's going to have a tougher task in the next game, too, against that Eagles offensive line, but who are we to doubt him getting it done? He's just incredible.
And one of the best plays he might have made of the entire game, shout out to our producer Quinn for pointing this out, on the controversial 4th down, which we could talk about a little bit, where Josh Allen looked like he got the first down. He was ruled short. When they reviewed it on the replay, Chris Jones on really what would have been the defining angle where we could really see whether or not he got it. Chris Jones was perfectly standing where the camera was trying to get down, so you couldn't see the football. And of course, Chris Jones obviously didn't know where the cameraman was in that play, but maybe one of the best plays of the game, Chris Jones was being right in front of the camera guy, so we couldn't get a clear shot of whether or not Josh Allen got the first down.
Every bit of that 6'6" frame matters, right? Even if he was 6'2" or 6'3", maybe they would have seen it. But no, he's just, and that's what he is. He's always in the right spot.
He's just
you need him
the clutch factor, man. I'm telling you, they figure out a way. If
it was week 7, he'd have been off to the side, or he would. But no, I mean, it just again a great football game, but he's just a guy. It's every time it feels like just as much as Mahomes and Kelsey. Again, Chris Jones steps up every single time, and you mentioned those numbers, and it's ridiculous. He's just one of the constants in the league. And you mentioned with Aaron Donald retired now, it's hard not to call him the best D tackle in the league.
Oh, absolutely, he absolutely is. He's probably a first ballot Hall of Famer as well. So I already broke down, Dolan, one aspect of the Bills defense that I was disappointed in. What was another aspect that you were disappointed in?
Another guy on the Bills defense. I thought coming into this game, Greg Rousseau's been their best defensive player all year, and they needed him to be that in this game, and it just didn't happen. Especially when you think about the matchup with the Chiefs' offensive tackles, Joe Thuney playing tackle on one side. Jawan Taylor has been playing mediocre football on the other side all year. That's been the big soft spot for the Chiefs, right, is their offensive tackles. And Rousseau rushed the passer 29 times, one pressure, only won one other rep, 52.3 pass rush grade. So it really just comes down to, look, they didn't cover a soul. They didn't get a whole lot of pass rush going. I think it was 9 pressures all night and only 2 sacks. It's just not going to work against Mahomes when you're playing. And even if it wasn't Mahomes, if it was Joe Burrow, if it was Justin Herbert, you leave a quarterback that clean, and your coverage unit is that flawed, this is what you're going to give up 32 points, and you're going to ask Josh Allen to do way more. And I think, to expand on Allen, because there's going to be a lot of people who's most disappointing is going to be Allen. But again, I just go back to what more do you want him to do? He went into Kansas City and scored 29 points. And tied the game. And I know, again, he had a shot with the ball in his hands. Steve Spagnuolo, he beat him. He did. He beat him on that play on the 4th down especially. But I just don't know what more they could ask from him without going, okay, this defense has to be substantially better. And he shouldn't have to score 35 on the road in Kansas City in the cold. He shouldn't have to score 48 points or whatever that was in Detroit. And losing games 44-42 in in LA against the Rams earlier this year. You go back to the shootout, the big Gabe Davis game a few years ago in this same stadium, where what more do you want him to do? That's where I'm at with Josh Allen. So I just until they get substantially better on defense, they won't win at all.
It sucks, man, honestly, for Josh Allen. I feel for him, and I feel for almost any other quarterback in the NFL right now. It's almost like the Michael Jordan thing back in the 90s, where there's so many legendary players in the 1990s that just never won a ring, like Charles Barkley or anything like that. And it's just like, they play with Jordan. So, what do you want him to do out there? It's kind of the Mahomes thing right now, unfortunately, the same thing. So, I want to shout out one guy that it's a big reason why Greg Rousseau had not a great night. Joe Thuney, man. Joe Thuney has been outstanding. He had 37 pass blocking snaps at left tackle. Joe Thuney is an all-pro guard, by the way, playing left tackle. A lot like Donovan Jackson.
I was just going to go there. Isn't it the fun part that, of course, we do the college show, and we watch Ohio State win a title with a guard playing left tackle and playing at least solid enough and fixing their pass pro and going and winning the whole thing. And now we're seeing the same thing with the Chiefs and Thuney. We're just seeing the same thing on both levels with that. And again, for considering the standard of where Thuney should be at playing as a guard playing tackle, you just need him to be good enough, and that's really what he's been, because before they moved him over, they had a bottom 3 set of offensive tackles in the league. It was horrible.
And not only good enough to own, 34 pass blocking snaps, 0 pressures allowed. 0.
Can't ask for any better.
He got beat on 1 rep on 34. 86 pass blocking graded for him in this one.
It does. It just feels like we're talking about Ohio State again, like we usually do. It's unreal.
And listen, it felt like Ohio State's going to win it all. We'll see if the Chiefs win it all in the Super Bowl in a couple weeks against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.